Hello and welcome back to the Pick Six podcast with Sawyer Gill. Today, we'll be recapping week 4 of the college football season, going over some of the top 25 matchups as well as some tough starts, tough games, and some best of. We'll go over some hot seats as well. So, the first game we'll be going over is the Alabama Crimson Tide versus the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, when I talked about this game in the preview and picks and preview episode, I told you all that I would take Ole Miss in this +6, I believe it was, +7, +6. It was plus 7. I thought their offense would be a lot more explosive. To be completely honest, they put up 48 against Georgia Tech, 37 against Tulane, 73 against Mercer. I thought it wouldn't stop here, and it did. The train stopped here. And on the Alabama side of things, great game. Great game. I still don't think they have the quarterback situation figured out. That's one big thing that they'll have to figure out for now. But just a great game by them. A really impactful running game. This really showed a lot about their running game this time. Jason McClellan. Hopefully turning into one of those running backs like the Derrick Henry or the Josh Jacobs or the Najee Harris that they've had in the past couple of years. Obviously, they had Jahmyr Gibbs last year. Wasn't like the rest of the guys, like the Najee Harris, like the Derrick Henry, like the Josh Jacobs. He was a unique guy, more of a pass-catching running back last year. But this year, we really, in the first 3 weeks of the season, we hadn't seen anything like we have in the past couple of years, where they had no running game. They had no running game at all. Usually in the past couple of years, they had a great offensive line. They had the guys that I just mentioned, and their running game was tip top. It was one of the best in the whole game those years. This year was different, but this game was different for them. They showed that their running game was serious. 17 carries, 105 yards, and a touchdown for Jason McClellan. Now, moving on from the running game, their passing game is still awful. We don't know what the quarterback situation is right now. For all we know, they could put Tyler Buchner back in or Ty Simpson back in. It's really all up to what Nick Saban is feeling. So we don't know about their passing game. I think Jalen Milroe is a good quarterback. I don't think he'll lead them to wins against LSU and Tennessee like they have in the past. Also, their receiving game isn't that great. I thought Jermaine Burton was going to be their number one guy. Not a great receiving game for him. 2 receptions for 62 yards. I mean, it's all right, but it's not really that impressive, especially in the college game. Nobody really stood out today. They had 1 touchdown receiving, Jalen Hale, and I believe it was that 33-yarder that he caught. But on the other side of the ball, Alabama's defense is what really showed out this game. It's what really took them to victory. That's what's really going to take them to victories in the SEC, in the rest of SEC play. But to be completely honest, I don't think this gets rid of any sketchy feeling that Alabama fans were feeling before against South Florida and Texas. I think their sketchiness continues. It didn't really show us a lot. Next up, we're going to look at Georgia UAB. I didn't talk about this game beforehand. I made a grave mistake in not talking about all the top 25 teams in the picks and preview episode. But this game, I didn't really watch a lot of this game, to be completely honest. I didn't really watch any of it. But what I will say is that Carson Beck, if he plays like he did this game, 338 yards and 3 touchdowns, they're going to win the SEC. Obviously, it's against a 1-3 team now. But they played really well. Obviously, they have Brock Bowers, NFL level tight end, hopefully, and projected to be a number 1 draft or round 1 draft pick. And then they had Daijun Edwards showing out. We haven't really heard a lot from this guy this season so far. He's had a couple of good games. He only played 1 against South Carolina. 20 carries for 118 yards. Looks really nice to me. 12 carries for 66 yards this time. But what really showed out is his touchdowns. He had 2. Georgia did not cover the spread, which is a common theme from this year's team. And I think it's because their defense took a big step back. We expected their defense to take a big step back last year, and it didn't. This year, I think we're feeling those. We're feeling that defensive step back. But really, a nice offensive game by Georgia. And I hope to see, or I don't hope, but as I'm unbiased, but I hope not. I hope, but I think we're going to see a lot more of dominant football from Georgia, especially in SEC play. Next up, number 2 Michigan versus number nothing Rutgers, 31-7. Rutgers covered the spread by a half a point according to Caesar Sportsbook, or by a whole point. I mean, the spread was Michigan minus 24. It was a tie. Yeah, interesting game. Rutgers, they played well until halftime, and then they just lost it. Was 14-7 at halftime, and then Michigan breaks away like it always does. Michigan is statistically one of the best third quarter teams in the past couple of years, the past 2 years that they've made the playoff, and Rutgers is one of statistically the worst third quarter teams in the past couple of years, and didn't stop this year. Gavin Wimsatt, not that great, 180 yards, a nice touchdown to open up the game and lead the game 7-0. A 69-yard pass. Really, it was a 14-yard pass that turned into a 69-yard run. But I mean, that was really it for the Rutgers offensively. They didn't really show anything else at all. Versus Michigan, we're seeing the same thing we did for the past couple of years, where it's Blake Corum leading the Michigan offense. 2 touchdowns, 97 yards, 21 carries. J.J. McCarthy, 214 yards, a touchdown. Not really that great, especially for a Michigan quarterback. Not that I expected more out of him, just because it's Michigan and their strong suit is their running game and their defense. But I mean, come on now. All right. So next game we are going to recap is number 3 Texas at nothing Baylor. The 1-3 Baylor. What an awful start to the season, you know. Not a lot of hype going into the season. I think Dave Aranda's a good coach. He got upgraded when Matt Rule left for the NFL and got the Panthers job. I don't think he's really that great of a coach. Dave Aranda is. I think he could be out of a job. If not this year, the next. But not a great game by Baylor. Sawyer Robinson. Sawyer Robinson is my first name. 203 yards and an interception. Not a great game at all. You don't want to see that from a Power 5 starting quarterback. Quinn Ewers on the other side, 293 yards, a touchdown. I don't know. It's good. But for a 38-6 game, you would expect more than 300 yards passing, and we just didn't see it. Their strong game, though, is their running game. Jonathan Brooks with 2 touchdowns and 106 yards off of 18 carries. Really strong by that. I usually use a benchmark of if they make it to 100 yards over 20 carries, I would say that was a pretty good game rushing. And then receiving wise, they had Jatavion Sanders, 5 receptions for 110 yards. Great game. Not really any good. Xavier Worthy, their big guy, didn't really come up big this game. 3 receptions for 31 yards. And I mean, that was really it for them, was Jatavion Sanders and Jonte Cook with a big 51-yard touchdown. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Texas should be the number 1 team in the country for me. I think they looked really good, and I don't think any other top 10 team looked that great to me. Let's see here. Number 4, Florida State versus number nothing Clemson. This game I'll be talking about for a while. I watched this whole game. I thought Florida State played amazing here. And I'm not talking about their offense. I think their defense played amazing. They had a defensive touchdown. I think Death Valley is a hard place to play. Jordan Travis stepped up. I wouldn't call it the greatest game ever, but he stepped up when he needed to, especially in overtime. But I think the real story coming from Florida State is Keon Coleman. Man, this dude is electric. You saw him catch the winning touchdown grab in overtime. And then that defense, that staunch defense that I was talking about, really pushed them over to the top in overtime, not allowing a touchdown score. And if it went the other way, I don't know. I think college football would be a little bit more chaotic, especially in the rankings, especially in the AP poll. But on the other side of the ball, Cade Klubnik. Man, I really don't know what to say about this guy. I was telling myself after I watched this game, there are two guys in the league that I think need one more year. And I think it's Cade Klubnik and I think it's Jalen Milroe. That in other words, I don't think Dabo Swinney or Nick Saban should bench these guys. But I don't think they'll get their team to a playoff this year. Obviously, I think Clemson is eliminated at this point from the playoff. But I think playoff contention is out of the race for Alabama if they start Jalen Milroe, and he's really the best guy. But on the running game, Will Shipley, a dog. Phil Maffa, all right. They had Bo Collins, pretty good game. But yeah, Will Shipley, going back to him, great running back. I said before this that he was an average running back. He absolutely proved me wrong. 2 touchdowns, just a dual threat running back. And I mean, even though I think Clemson's season it's not over, but for playoff hopes it is, I think he'll still show out for the rest of the season. So yeah, something big to look out for. Jordan Travis Heisman for the rest of the season. I think he's probably the front runner at this point. Him and Caleb Williams. It's honestly probably a pick 'em, but who knows? Yeah, great game by Florida State. Tough to play in Death Valley, and they covered the spread. So really, they didn't drop in the rankings, and they shouldn't have. So great game by them. Next, we're going to move on to USC and Arizona State. USC, obviously a Heisman quarterback in Caleb Williams. We might see that again this year. M. Lloyd, who is this guy? Marshawn Lloyd. I didn't watch this game, so I wouldn't know who he is. But 14 carries for 154 yards. What's surprising about that stat line, there aren't any touchdowns in there. So he was running for big plays, but ended up getting tackled. So Marshawn Lloyd, great game by him. Caleb Williams, great quarterback. Probably my front runner for Heisman. I know I just said Jordan Travis. Look out for him in the Heisman, but Caleb Williams at this point is my front runner. On the other side of the ball, Arizona State, they haven't really been good in a while, in a very long time. The Pac-12 is good this year. They're not going to survive. Drew Pine, I believe he's a Notre Dame transfer. He played at Notre Dame last year. Not a great quarterback at Notre Dame last year. Not that great. Then on the going back to the USC side of the ball, Brendan Rice, 7 receptions, 133 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Great game. Look out for the rest of the season. But I think the big story from this game is that USC didn't cover. It was minus 34.5. They won by 14. And I think it's due to their defense. And the defense has been the problem. It was the problem last year, and it's still the problem this year. And who knows? I still think they're going to make the playoff. I think they're a great team. But I don't know, man. That defense, when it comes time to play Utah and Oregon and UCLA and some of these tough teams in the Pac-12, I don't know if that defense can hold up. And we saw it last year collapse against Utah twice. Who knows what's going to happen this year? So yeah, that was USC versus Arizona State, 42-28. Next one, we're gonna go to my favorite game this week. That is Ohio State versus Notre Dame. Ohio State 17, Notre Dame 14. Obviously, a lot of views on this game. So if you listening to this podcast, you probably watched this game. Nice win by Ohio State. Nice win. But you look at it, they beat them 21-10 last year. Obviously, the transfer portal changed things, and they lost CJ Stroud, but not convincing at all. Not a convincing one at all. I think Notre Dame's a really good team, but I think Michigan's a better team than Notre Dame. So I think the game is going to be interesting this year. And we also see Ohio State playing Penn State in a couple of weeks. I believe that game is in the Horseshoe, so that's going to be interesting. We'll probably see Ohio State favored heavily. But just, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. This game, on the other hand, Sam Hartman, not a great game, man. You know, if Notre Dame was to win this game, they need to put out more points early, and they didn't. The score was 3-0 at halftime. Notre Dame putting up a big, fat, whopping 0. That big, fat, whopping 0 to only 14 points total, and all 14 coming in the second half. And I think it's due to the fact that Sam Hartman only passed for 175 yards. Audric Estime, my bad for mispronouncing his name on Thursday's show. Audric Estime for 60 yards. All right game. And their leading a receiver was their tight end Mitchell Evans. We only saw Chris Tyree for one reception for 25 yards. Didn't have that big of an impact. That obviously had an impact on the game as a whole. But, I mean, Ohio State, I think, not a great team offensively is the big takeaway from this. We'll see them for the rest of the year play two tough teams. They should be everybody on their schedule, but they play Penn State and Michigan late in the season. Penn State, they play on October 21st, and Michigan, obviously, the third Sunday in November. But really, those are the only two tough games. The Big Ten is awful this year. God, awful. So, yeah, Ohio State looking to probably be a 2-loss team at worst. Notre Dame, on the other hand, tough schedule this year. Luckily, they get all their hard games out of the way early. And I mean that in the most respectful way possible to their late games. But Duke, number 17, next week, looking to stay on that roll. But I think Notre Dame's going to stifle them and stop that undefeated streak. I don't think Duke is a football school, and I think they're going to show it next week. On the other side, though, or on the other games, Louisville, easy win. USC, I think that's a loss right there. I think Caleb Williams is going to push pressure on them. Pitt win, Clemson win, Wake Forest win, and Stanford win. So really, I feel like they're only going to lose 2 more games at most this season. So that was Notre Dame versus Ohio State. Ohio State did tie the spread. We're seeing a common theme of that this week with Ohio State and Michigan. But yeah, we're gonna keep it in the Big Ten, where we see an Iowa Hawkeye team get blown out by Penn State. Brian Ferentz isn't gonna have a job at the end of the season. It's a growing storyline in college football that this dude was given a ultimatum by the team that he needs to score at least 25 points per game over the season and win 7 games. He's not going to score 25 points per game for the rest of the season, and he's well below that number right now. So, yeah, it's not looking great for him. Cade McNamara, 42 yards passing. What is that, Brian Ferentz? What is that? That's why you're not going to have a job at the end of the season. I'm sorry to say it, but I mean, if this ultimatum is true, you're not going to have a job because your quarterback is passing for 42 yards in a game against the number 7 Penn State team. That, I mean, the spread here, what was the spread? The spread here is Penn State minus 14. It's 14-0 at halftime. You could have capitalized on that, but you didn't. Cade McNamara only passed 42 yards whole, and it really just didn't happen. On the other side of the ball, Drew Aller, 4 touchdowns and 166 yards passing. Doesn't make sense to me at all how that's a real stat line. But Katron Allen, 21 carries, 72 yards. Not really a great not really a great game rushing. And then I think Keandre Lambert Smith, their leading receiver, with 66 yards, 8 receptions, and a touchdown. Nothing really too impressive about this Penn State team offensively. I think the real impressiveness was defensively. Obviously stifling that Iowa offense, led by a freaking, I don't even know what to call him, Brian Ferentz. But yeah, that Penn State defense is definitely going to be something interesting to watch against the Ohio State game coming up on October 21st. All right, next game we're going to talk about is Cal at Washington. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Penix Jr., 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. I am reading that off for you word for word. 304 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception, 19 for 25. Can you believe that? He is one of the best quarterbacks, not in the Pac-12, in all of college football. And I think experts have been screaming it from the rooftops since the season has started that he is a great quarterback. He was not a great quarterback at Indiana. He is a great quarterback at Washington. I don't know if it's the coaching staff. I don't think so. I think he's probably put in monstrous amounts of work to get better every day. And I think it's shown. James Polk, or Jalen Polk, my bad, James Polk was the president of the United States, 14th. 8 receptions, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Great game by him. Dylan Johnson, 66 yards, a touchdown by him off of 10 carries. Great game. On the Cal side of the ball, bunch of nerds, to be completely honest. Ben Finley, 3 interceptions. Can't have that as a Pac-12 team. You're just going to crush. Honestly, this year in the Pac-12, if you don't put up 40 points to a game, you're just not going to win the football game. I think that's what we've learned, unless your name is Utah or UCLA. But great game by Washington. Defense, I don't know. It looked a little bit rough out there. They covered, but giving up 32 points to a Cal team that isn't very good, not great, especially when you gave up when you got 3 interceptions, and you still allowed 32 points in a game. Not great at all. But recap: Washington college football playoff hunt. Who knows? They might get in. Next, I'm going to look at probably the game with the second most amount of hype this slate. Number 10 Oregon versus number 19 Colorado. Colorado is now out of the AP top 25 poll. I don't really know why anybody pays attention to the AP top 25 poll. Nobody really should be paying attention to college football polls until the CFP committee's polls come out, because that's what really matters. But I mean, the AP poll and the coaches poll are all we have to look at right now, so we do look at them. But great game by Oregon. I mean, what can you say? They ran all over them, and I mean that figuratively and literally. Bo Nix, 2 276 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. I think it's Bucky Irving, 89 yards off of 10 carries. That's pretty good considering he didn't really get the ball much. And Troy Franklin, 2 touchdowns, 8 receptions, 126 yards. I think that shows us one thing, and I think you also learned it from watching the game, is that Oregon's strong suit was passing the ball this game, and it shows that Bo Nix has come a long way from being a freshman in, 2018 or something. Now he's a great quarterback. He's a great Power 5 quarterback. But there's only one quarterback that can say that in this game, because Shedeur Sanders, 159 yards, 1 touchdown, kind of looking like the Pittsburgh Steelers offense out there. 6 points in 1 game, not great at all. And a blocked PAT. Special teams trouble is not a good sign for a team at all. Xavier Weaver, top receiver. Obviously, Travis Hunter out that game. I saw a clip of him playing video games while the game was going on. Is he really that great of a teammate? I don't know. Dylan Edwards, not a great game offensively. Three carries for 21 yards. And Anthony Hankerson, not great either. 5 carries for 31 yards. Colorado obviously didn't cover that 21-point spread. I told y'all to pick that. If you did, my bad. Yeah, they're frauds. I think we learned that this game. And they have a tough schedule coming up. USC next week. Not looking great for them at all. But I think there's one thing to remember. They were a 1-win team last year. They're 3-1 this year. I would say that's a really big upgrade, a step up. So really happy for them so far. We'll see if they can keep it going. I don't know if they can, though. The next game, I think the second or third best team in the Pac-12. Dude, the Pac-12 is so good this year. It's insane. But Utah definitely contributes to that. 4-0 Utah. Number 11 probably went up in the rankings. ESPN hasn't updated it yet, so I wouldn't. I have checked them. I just don't have them off the top of my head. But 14-7 against a UCLA team that might be out of the top 25 now. Dante Moore. I said this earlier about Cade Klubnik. Give the kid a year or two. He'll be one of the best in the league. It's nice that he's getting playing time now. Obviously, he's not leading his team to a college football playoff this year. But yeah, I don't know. I think he's a good quarterback, but he's a freshman. Freshmen make dumb mistakes, and I think it shows in this game. Only scoring 7 points. Utah has a staunch defense, only giving up 7 points. But their offense isn't that great without Cam Rising. Hopefully they can get him back soon. But Nate Johnson, he's all right. But a freshman leading your team, especially a team of this magnitude and strength, not great. Not great at all. As I mentioned earlier, great defense by Utah. I look at that Utah defensive coordinator, and I look at him and I say, he's going to get a Power 5 head coaching job in probably less than 3 years. So yeah, we're going to keep it moving, and we're going to move out to the SEC, where Arkansas plays LSU. LSU fought a close one here, 34-31. Jayden Daniels, amazing game, 320 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. We didn't see a lot of Malik Neighbors in this game. Instead, we saw Brian Thomas Jr., 133 yards, 5 receptions, 2 touchdowns, And on the running side of the game, we had Logan Diggs with 97 yards off of 14 carries. You know, for a number 12 team in the country, and I think they dropped to number 13 after this week, off at the top of my head, but they dropped to number 13 after this week. You can't allow 31 yards to a 2-2 Arkansas team, who's just not that good, plain and simple. I don't think Sam Pittman's a good head coach. I think KJ Jefferson is an average college quarterback, which isn't going to get him anywhere in the pros. Might not even get him drafted. So yeah, LSU didn't cover. Only had one turnover and 509 total yards, but still not a great game by them. Really looking more out of their out of their defense. Their next test is probably going to be Ole Miss next week, and then Missouri the week after. But if we're being completely real, if they beat Ole Miss and they beat Missouri, they're going to beat Auburn and they're going to beat Army. Their next big test is against Alabama, who, if they beat, it's the end of the Alabama dynasty. It's the officially nail in the coffin. So yeah, look for them to be pretty good this season. Arkansas, just an awful team. Next, we're going to go to Washington State versus Oregon State. The Pac-2. Yeah, these are the only two teams left, folks, in the Pac-12 after everybody is getting drawn by conference realignment to go to different conferences. We saw Cal and who was it? Cal and Stanford get persuaded to go to the ACC next year, which tough conference, man. I heard somebody on a podcast say it should be just called the Coastal Podcast or the Coastal Conference, because you're gonna have Cal and Stanford versus all the ACT teams, and then you also add SMU, which they're not on a coast, but it's still mostly coastal. So back to what I was saying. Washington State versus Oregon State. No defense played at all in this game, which is Pac-12 football at its finest. Oregon State, a pretty big comeback. They were losing 14 to 35 at the start of the fourth quarter, and they scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. Not enough to beat Cam Ward and the Washington State Cougars. Cam Ward, who, by the way, is electric, just an electric quarterback. Dark horse for the Heisman, I guess. 404 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, which is with his main target being Kyle Williams. 7 receptions, 174 yards, 1 touchdown. And on the other side of the ball, DJ Uiagalelei. Looking for more out of him. 198 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Not great. Most of their points came from Deshaun Fenwick, their running back, who had a monster game, 11 carries, 101 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Yeah, a monster game, to be concise and brief. But yeah, not a great game passing. Silas Bolden, their leading wide receiver, with less than 100 yards. Not a great game passing. Oregon State did not cover this one, but they were away. You can give this one away, especially since you're not a team looking to make any college football playoff this year. Next game, we're gonna go out to newly acquired Big 12 team, Cincinnati versus Oklahoma. I believe it's in 2 weeks, but this Red River rivalry is shooting to be a big one. Yeah, it's in 2 weeks versus Texas. At Oklahoma. This Red River rivalry is about to be a big one, folks. I very much so pay attention to it. Could be the difference maker in who makes the playoff this year. But Oklahoma, you know, it was a good win for them. Overall, they covered the spread. They covered the spread by a point. But I think more than anything, it shows that they're vulnerable. I think watching this game, and I did watch this game for a little bit, they looked like they were in control the whole time. But the score doesn't tell you that. So, they might look in control the whole time versus Texas in the Red River rivalry. But the score at the end might be completely different than what you see. Oklahoma with the momentum and how they're controlling the game. So that's one thing to look out for when they're playing the big teams like Texas. But, I mean, other than that, Dillon Gabriel, 322 yards, a touchdown. Great game by him. Leading receiver, Andrew Anthony, 7 receptions, 117 yards. And on the Florida side of the ball, on the Cincinnati Bearcats side of the ball, I don't know why I said Florida. I think it was because Emory Jones transferred from Florida. But on the Cincinnati side of the ball, Emory Jones, not great game. 22 for 41, 235 yards, 2 interceptions. And he was their leading rusher as well for 15 carries and 142 yards. My bad. Yeah. Cincinnati, don't think we'll see them in any college football playoff anytime soon. Probably a miracle that it even happened. But a little bit of a wake-up call for the conference, or for Cincinnati entering the conference. They got its first taste of Big 12 football. But I don't think there's anything to worry about with Cincinnati. Oklahoma, maybe a little bit of nerves, especially going into that Red River rivalry game. We'll see how that plays out. Number 17 North Carolina versus number 20 versus 1 and 3 Pitt. I think this game, Pitt was leading some of the game halfway through the second quarter, and not great by UNC. I think this UNC team is vulnerable. I think that they're just like they were in the past couple of years, where they get to this 6-0 start and everybody's like, oh, Drake May, Sam Howell, Dark Horse Heisman. No, it's not going to happen. They're going to fall apart at the end of the year and somehow end up finishing 9-3, which, is an awful record for a team that is supposed to have a Heisman quarterback, But in this game, Drake May, 296 yards and 1 touchdown. They did cover, but it was a 1-3 Pitt team. Covering was way less than the goal. So yeah, and you look at the Pitt side, Phil Jurkovich, 106 yards passing and your team putting up 24 points. That is absolutely insane to me. I don't understand how that happens. And your running back only rushing for 83 yards. That is Rodney Hammond. That's insane to me that your team puts up 24 points and you pass for 109 yards. Obviously, we saw Cade McNamara passing for 42 yards, but his team put up no points. So it made sense. But this one, it doesn't. It just doesn't. So I guess not really a statement win or loss by either team. It was just a game. a game that's going to go down in the record books is pretty normal. Not normal. Duke getting off to a 4-0 start and being the number 18 team in the country. We saw them beat a sketchy Clemson team in week 1, and now we know that sketchy Clemson team was very much so sketchy, as they're now 2-2. But I mean, the Duke team looks amazing. Riley Leonard, this is his year. I believe he was a freshman last year. No, he was a sophomore last year. Didn't really have that great of a year last year. He had a above average year. Don't get me wrong, but no Big Ten or big ACC championship. But this year things are looking a little bit different. Sneaky, dark horse. Who knows? Duke ACC championship. Who knows? But he was also their leading rusher with 42 yards. On the passing side, though, Jordan Moore, 86 yards, 8 receptions, a receiving touchdown. Pretty good day for him. And the UConn Huskies. I mean, what can you say? They're the UConn Huskies. They're a basketball school, not a football school. Not a football school, folks. You heard it here first. UConn is not a football school. The last 3 ranked games, we are going to go to, we're going to go to Temple, Philadelphia, one of the 5 Philadelphia schools, where Miami beats up on the Temple Owls. What can I say, folks? Did I expected this? Yes, I did not expect Miami to start out 4-0, but I mean, this was an easy game for them. But a really nice game for them offensively too. 220 yards for Tyler Van Dyke, 3 touchdowns, all passing, and then 2 touchdowns rushing by Henry Parrish Jr. 139 yards, and then passing, Jacoby George with 90 receiving yards and 5 receptions. Wondering where all their passing touchdowns came, and it was mostly by this guy Xavier Restrepo. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but two passing touchdowns to Xavier, and then a passing touchdown to Colby Young, who didn't really have that great of a game. Neither did Restrepo. But I mean, this Miami Hurricanes team to look out for. I think they're part of one of the best conferences in football behind the Pac-12. With a lot of teams 4-0. We're seeing Syracuse 4-0, probably going to ruin that. North Carolina 4-0, Duke 4-0, Florida State 4-0, Louisville 4-0. They're probably going to ruin that. So, yeah, 3 very serious, great teams. That'll be interesting to look out for. So that was Miami 41, Temple 7, as expected. Then we're going to go down to Knoxville, Tennessee, Rocky Top, where Joe Milton had a bounce back week after losing to Florida on the road. 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, passing. Not great, but it'll do. It'll do for a 45-14 victory against UTSA. 136% QB rating. Great job by him, though. That looks great. Dylan Sampson, great rushing game. 11 attempts, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. To me, that looks like he had a great game. Had a couple breakaway runs, as it says on here. He had a 10-yard run for a touchdown and a 41-yard run for a touchdown. So really, I think the story of this game was the rushing game. Joe Milton, I still think he has some things to work on. Tennessee did cover the spread here, but I still think they have some things to work on. UTSA, it's your average belt team or whatever conference they're part of. Average. That's the best way I can describe it. They're an average team this year, 1-3. Oh, my bad. They joined the AAC this year, so not part of the Sun Belt anymore. Part of the AAC. So a little bit of a harder schedule. I still think they're going to be a pretty average team. They were one of the greats in the AAC. So look for them to be a high on your radar in a couple of years as they keep moving up the ranks. Tennessee, on the other hand, just I don't know. They're gonna have an average season, but I would look out for them to do something against Alabama. I don't know. Hopefully, not hopefully because I'm unbiased again, but hopefully for the game they can do something against Alabama. Hopefully for the chaos of college football they can. But who knows? Who knows? Joe Milton is definitely a different guy than Hendon Hooker is. Our final top 25 game is Florida at Charlotte, or Charlotte at Florida. I mean, Florida is a team that's in the top 25 that doesn't deserve to be in the top 25. I think Graham Mertz is a good quarterback. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback. I think he can lead his team to a 7-5 record. I'm not sure he can lead it to much past that. Is Florida? I think Florida is not playing Alabama this year. They avoided a tough road, tough opponent altogether. But they didn't cover the spread here, and I don't think they deserve to be in the top 25. Nobody really stood out on their offense today. Ricky Pearsall, 104 yards receiving, no touchdowns. Graham Mertz only throwing one touchdown, though. He didn't run in for a touchdown either. Really looks to me like their defense scored a touchdown. They did not. Never mind. This is interesting. Oh, they had one touchdown the whole game. Yeah, not great by Florida at all against a bad Charlotte team. So, yeah, bad Florida. Probably shouldn't be in the top 25. Again, 7-5 at best. So I'm just going to look over, see if there's any games I want to discuss. Syracuse obviously getting off to that hot 4-0 start against Army. Garrett Schrader, good quarterback. NFL worthy? No. But good quarterback. Look for them to be another weird 8-4 team this year. They're obviously going to win some games in the ACC, but yeah, I don't know. They put up a fight against Clemson last year. I wonder if they're going to win. I don't know if they play them this year. They do. They play them next week. Ooh, that's going to be a good one, folks. That's going to keep that on your radar. That game is going to be a good one. Virginia Tech sucks. Whatever. It's just a bit off year for them. Georgia Tech, Wake Forest. Wake Forest are frauds. Let me just put it out there now. Wake Forest is a fraudulent team. After they lost Sam Hartman last year, they have Mitch Griffis starting. That's a weird name. Mitch Griffis. Threw for 162 yards and 3 interceptions. Not great by Wake Forest. Frauds. Next, we're going to move over to the Big 12 because there's some interesting unranked teams here. Kansas 4-0. They're going to make a bowl game this year, and they're going to surprise a lot of people. I think they still have Jalen Daniels. Sorry, my bad. pretty all right quarterback. TCU coming off a defending or a runner up in the national champion spot. Not a great year this year, 3-1, but geez, that hype last year was insane, and it's just they're not living up to what they were last year. Nobody expected them to, but I mean, um, I don't know. I don't know if they would have beaten Colorado, people's eyes would be turning, but they didn't, and nobody knows at this point. Kansas State get back week beat in conference opponent UCF, 0-1 in the Big 12, 3-1 overall. I don't know. I think some of these teams like Kansas State, like Houston, like Cincinnati, like SMU, like BYU, are just gonna have a hard time adjusting to the Big 12 for the first couple of years. So I think there are gonna be some teams that are just gonna like poach them. They're gonna be teams that end the year at like at a 4-8 record or a 3-9 record, and teams are gonna look at them on the schedule and be like, "Oh, that's a free win." Next we're gonna go to the Big Ten. Wisconsin beat Purdue on Friday, 38-17. Wisconsin's a good team. They lost to a very good Washington State team. Obviously, they're no national champion. We can throw that out the window. They're probably not even deserving a ranked spot at this point. They will deserve, however, they will deserve a ranked spot at the end of the year. My prediction. Iowa, I've obviously talked about, awful team. Illinois, I think they're not that great. Obviously, they lost their quarterback last week against they played somebody last. Who did they play last week? They played Penn State, and they lost their quarterback. What was the name? They lost their quarterback. Oh, never mind. They lost their quarterback last season in the transfer portal. I was thinking somebody totally different. But Illinois not having a great season, not living to the hype they had last year with Brett Bielema. They still have Brett Bielema, but just not a lot of hype around them this season, which is interesting. Nebraska, they're probably going to be 4-8 this year. Same with Northwestern. Same with Indiana. Same with Minnesota. Maryland showing out. They're going to be a tough opponent for teams on that schedule. Probably 2 Ohio State and 2 Michigan, who they play Ohio State on October the 7th, and they play Michigan way late in the season. But yeah, look for that game to be interesting. Pac-12. There's not really any games to talk about here. The only non-ranked game was Arizona-Stanford. And I was just, I don't know. They're both bad teams. It looks to be a close game. That's interesting. The teams, though, not interesting at all. So, yeah. SEC. It's probably our last conference before we do hot seats and best of the week. We basically talked about everything in this one that's really of interest. Mississippi State, again, probably 5-7 team at best. I don't think they're gonna make it in a bowl game this year. Sad to see it too after a season when your coach passed away. South Carolina, on the other hand, a really good team. I think they're gonna do the exact opposite and go 7-5 this year and sneak into a bowl game. Missouri 4-0. Watch out for them. They probably they play Georgia in November, so we'll know by then if they're real or if they're really just showing out. But they do play LSU in a couple of weeks, so that'll be an interesting one. Auburn, they hired Hugh Freeze this season. I don't think they're that good. really this season at all. Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher, 3-1 season. They're doing all right. I mean, Auburn is also 3-1, but I don't. Auburn had a sketchy win versus Cal, and they had and I mean, they've beaten these like FCS opponents other than Cal. So really, I don't think they're that good of a team. They might sneak into a bowl game just because of their schedule being so awful. But yeah. So yeah, that's about it. For the games I wanted to recap. So we'll just go through hot seats. To start with, I'm going to mention the obvious, and we're going to go with Deion Sanders in Colorado. Obviously, a ton of hype going into this game, and they got blown out. Not even close to covering the spread. Spread being 21, they lost by 38. 30. No, they lost by 36. Just not a great game by them. Another hot seat. And to follow up with that, you know, if they don't look good against USC next week, they have a rough schedule at it. I'm not sure if they're going to get over 6 wins. You know, they started the season at 3-0. It might end 3-9. So who knows? Just who knows? Another hot seat. We're going to go with Florida. Didn't cover the spread. You know, they lost to Utah earlier this season. A get-back week against Tennessee. I think Tennessee is a good team. I don't think Florida's a good team. I think it was a fluke loss for Tennessee. I think it was a fluke win for Florida. And I think it's going to play out in Tennessee's dismay for the rest of the season because I don't think Florida's going to do too well. And I don't think that win against Tennessee is going to matter at all for Florida because I don't think they're going to be in any conversation at all for the national title, for a college football playoff. They're probably not going to make the SEC championship. Hot take. They're definitely not. But yeah, our next hot seat, we're gonna put Iowa, and more specifically, Brian Ferentz and Kirk Ferentz for that matter. Brian Ferentz had to average 25 points per game, and so far he's way under that. And their schedule isn't looking too good after this either. They have no more ranked teams, but they have a tough Wisconsin team, a battle-hardened Michigan State team that probably going to beat them. Luckily, they don't have to play Maryland, but I mean, they just got teams that are their caliber for the rest of the season. So they're definitely going to win 7 games. Don't get me wrong, but they have a lot of room to make up for in the points per game category that I don't think they're going to get playing these Big Ten opponents. So that will be interesting. My next hot seat, we're gonna go with the North Carolina Tar Heels. The clock is ticking at this point for them to lose a game and, you know, be eliminated from that imaginary college football playoff talk because they're probably going to lose a fluke game. I don't think anybody in the ACC is good enough for them to lose a game and still be in the college football playoff talks. And to be completely honest, whoever they lose to in the ACC they're probably going to have to meet again in the championship, and we see how those go. Especially when we see how those go with games like the Utah USC game where they lost both last year. You know, I think the only time I've seen an exception to that is when Alabama lost to Georgia in the championship after beating them in the SEC championship in 2021, I want to say. So, yeah, interesting. And then my last hot seat of the week is going to be the or my I have two left. My bad. So my second to last hot seat of the week is going to be the LSU Tigers. You know, just tough to see. They came out with a win, but they had to fight for it. And I mean, I know they already lost to Florida State, who I'll get to later about being the best of. I know they already lost to Florida State earlier, but people are gonna look back at this game, and they're gonna be like, "Well, why didn't you beat 5-7 Arkansas better or 4-8 Arkansas better?" Because they only beat them by 3 points. Sketchy game. It obviously didn't rise them in the rankings. Although they are 2-0 in conference play, I think that's the one upside in this game. And Jaden Daniels had himself a game. Those are the two upsides of this game. But they had to get a go-ahead field goal to win this game. So definitely a tough win for LSU, and it's nothing to celebrate. On my last hot seat, it's the Clemson Tigers. You know, they weren't favored in this game, but the spread almost called them favored. I mean, it was 2 points away from being a pick 'em. And you know, you go out there and you play your hardest and you get your heart ripped out, man. You get your heart ripped out. Obviously, you lost not even the farthest thing from a nail biter versus Duke to open up the season 28-7, just awful. And then Dabo Swinney made a comment. He said no trophies are given out in November, which is the biggest loser talk I might ever hear in my life. Dabo Swinney has said some just crazy stuff to the reporters in his life about the God NIL, about how they have had NIL going on in the past couple of years, and it's not the NIL you're thinking of. It is God's name, image, and likeness. Like, what is that, dude? But just I don't know. Clemson's not a great team. I think it's the end of the Clemson dynasty for now. I think if Cade Klubnik can be a better quarterback next year, they're going to be good. But it's the end of Clemson's year for college football playoff hopes. They're obviously going to make a bowl game because they're Clemson and they're led by one of the best coaches in the country. I know I just made some awful comments about him, but I mean, he's a good quarterback. I mean, a good coach. So, interesting. Interesting indeed. We're gonna move on to the best of, and end the episode on something strong. The best of are Michigan. I know they were down early in the game, 7-0 or 07. And they scored 31 unanswered. I would say that's pretty good, especially in a game that a lot of people thought, who knows what could happen. Jim Harbaugh's first game back. Yeah, just a well-played game. Alabama, I think it was it was a great week for them as a team. It was a get back week for them after two games that just didn't go their way. Obviously they won the game against South Florida, but it was more of a physical win than it was a moral win. It was not a moral win at all. It was a win that went on their record, but it wasn't a win that went in their minds. It was almost a loss for Nick Saban. He needs to push his players to do better. than 17-3 against South Florida. And I know I'm just a 16-year-old kid from his dad's office speaking about this, but you know, they just need more motivation and a quarterback play that's better. But this week, get back week, great for them. Another winner of the week, Penn State. I'm going to say a couple words about this, not a lot. They're going to go into that Ohio State matchup, hopefully for the college football world, undefeated, and it's going to be an interesting game. I think right now I have Ohio State winning that game just because it's Ohio State and that's what they do. There's not really any close games other than or games that they should lose other than maybe Michigan. And I don't think there's any exception here. I think they're going to probably beat Penn State. Another winner, Oregon, for reasons I've already said, that, Dan Lanning had this big speech before the game about how, Colorado is fighting for clicks and we're fighting for wins. Well, they fought for a win and they got one. It was a really, really convincing one too. So I'm happy for them. It's going to be interesting to see them play USC this year. They play them on November the 11th, which might be Friday, actually. No, it's a Saturday. But, they play on November the 11th. Interesting game there. And before that, they play Utah, they play Washington State, and they play Washington. Definitely interesting games there. Let's see here. I don't really know if I can consider some of these teams winners. Texas, a winner. Really, they showed out this week. 38-6. But for me, it was expected for them to do this. Great game by them, though. Miami winner, Duke winner, the exact same score, 41-7. But yeah, those are both winners. The ACC is going to be an interesting conference. It's going to be an interesting play out to the conference this year. Right now, the championship is anyone's game. Although, if I'm being a betting man and I'm being a realist now, I would not bet on Clemson at all. Winner, Washington State. It's the Pac-2, and they beat their other Pac-2 opponent in Oregon State. If they don't find a conference soon, they're probably just going to turn into independents. But for now, this is a great win for them because it symbolizes that they are the better of the two teams that are remaining in the Pac-12 or the Pac-2, and kind of helps them state a case for if they were to switch to a different conference. And then my last winner of the week is Utah. Just a great defensive team. They got a pick six. And their offense, if it hangs in there and it does the things that they've been doing for the past couple of weeks that Cam Rising's been out, they're just going to be a good team, and they're going to beat teams like Oregon, like USC, like Washington, like Oregon State down the line, that the teams that they need to beat in order to get to the college football playoff. So, yeah, that's that. That is Pick Six podcast, week 4 recap, hot seat, and best of. I'll see you later this week, Wednesday or Thursday, depending on what my schedule looks like, for the week 5 picks and preview. Week 5, interesting week. Not as much hype going into it as this week, week 4. Week 4, actually, a little fun, quirky stat for you real quick. Most ranked matchups since 2015, like interranked. So like a 6 versus 9 or like a 17 versus I don't know, like 21, something like that. But the most ranked matchups since 2015. Little interesting stat for you there. But yeah, so I'll see you on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on what my schedule looks like. So yeah, see you later. Hope you all have a great week.